Hello and welcome to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I'm sitting here at the historical Route 66 village. Now this was not an actual village back in the day, but this is a nice place to start our visit and a great representation of Route 66. You know, this is the 100th year anniversary of Route 66. Started in 1926, obviously 2026, and today that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be exploring some more of Route 66. I'll show you around the village here as I'm talking about what we're going to do, because there's some cool stuff to see here. There's the Red Fork Depot, and you know, Red Fork I believe was where oil was discovered in this area, so there's an oil derrick and lots of other stuff to see that I'll show you here. But you know, I've done a lot of Route 66 videos. I was looking at my playlist of Route 66, and I've made over 30 videos of Route 66. It started way back in 2021 where I did the whole thing, you know, and I did state by state, and then I put together a compilation. It's like a couple hours long. I went to every town along the way that was on the route, and then I started doing other videos, more detailed videos, little profiles of towns, maybe museums, and now we're up to like 30 and I'm gonna continue doing so. And this trip here, starting in Tulsa, kind of continues a trip that I had been doing a year or two ago, where I was kind of exploring north and south and on Route 66. So kind of like not only Route 66, but places that maybe you haven't heard of or isn't in the traditional Route 66 route. And I started that, you know, I did that in Kansas. There's a little stretch of Route 66 in Kansas, visited some towns that are not exactly on the route, then went into some places in the very corner of northeastern Oklahoma, and then continued on all the way down to Tulsa, and that's where, like I said, we're picking up here today. We're gonna head on east as far as we can go today. We're heading towards Oklahoma City. Probably won't make it all the way there today, and see some places that you might be familiar with, and then some that you might not be familiar with. In these videos, we don't spend a lot of time in the bigger cities or even the ones that are, you know, significantly incorporated. We're looking for smaller towns, places maybe you haven't heard too much about, but we will stop in those incorporated towns, see if we can find some Route 66 stuff along the way. And so maybe if you're planning a road trip, you can watch this video and see if there's anything that might be of interest to you. So let's head on out of Tulsa and see what we can find. So our highlighter changes from green to orange there in Tulsa. We're gonna head a little bit south there. You can see Oakhurst. Route 66 is that red line, so down to Bowden and then Sapulpa. As we leave Tulsa, this one's not exactly the traditional touristy Route 66 stop. Oakhurst is a basically suburb of Tulsa. And this post office here has been working since 1918. Now this one isn't from 1918. I'm guessing it's a little bit newer, but the post office has been here since 1918 because Oakhurst is basically a residential area that developed during the oil boom, and people kind of moved out this way from Tulsa to live in a little more rural area, and Tulsa has basically overgrown the area. And so as you drive around, some old houses, some dilapidated houses, some new houses, and kind of just a normal residential area, probably a couple thousand people. And then out on the actual Route 66, which is just one block behind me here, there's a couple of old buildings like gas stations and service stations. So definitely a stop on Route 66, but not one that you'll see too much tourist info about. But that's what we do on this channel. We're trying to let people know about things you might not have heard about or known about. So that's Route 66 right there, and there's a school here named the Allen Bowden School, Bowden or Bowden. There's a gymnasium, looks like a classic facade there, which I like. Don't know if that's older or if they've redone that to make it look newer, but so Bowden was an oil boom town. We're just a couple more miles down the road from Oakhurst. And there's a few old remnants down that way of maybe where the downtown used to be. But an old oil boom town, and had a post office from 1909 to 1957. And now just a quiet, unincorporated community, but they do still have a school. Our next town is Sapulpa, and if you saw a few days ago, I put a video out about Sapulpa and a cool museum that we visited. So we're gonna skip on past Sapulpa and head on down to our next Route 66 town. Heading out of Sapulpa, we're gonna hit another Route 66 town of Kellyville, and then one you may never have heard of, Heyburn. We're gonna take a little detour off Route 66 for a little bit. There's a couple of dots down here, Tabor and Slick. Kellyville was named for James Kelly, who established a local trading post in 1892, opened a post office in 1893. St. Louis and Oklahoma City Railroad, which later became the Frisco, built a line through Kellyville in 1898. Speaking of the railroad, the worst train disaster in Oklahoma history took place just west of town in 1917 when two Frisco trains collided. 23 people were killed and 80 were injured. Oil and gas were discovered in 1915 and created a bit of a population boom. Although oil and gas production eventually waned, population continued to grow. Now a significant number of employed residents commute to jobs in Sapulpa and Tulsa. And look at the population, you can see how it generally has gone up through the years. A big jump in 1980, again in 2010, slightly down in 2020 to 1,019. A little bit off Route 66 now. That's about a half a mile that way to Route 66. And then just down the hill here, there's the railroad. And there used to be a town called Heyburn that was here. And when you cross the railroad, there's not much to see. And I didn't think there would be anything. But then I drive a little bit up the hill, and it looks like there is ruins of one structure still here. Much of the story of Route 66 is of how towns vanished because of the interstate. You know, places would move to where the interstate is, or towns got bypassed. But Heyburn is a story of how it got passed by Route 66. So there was a post office here from 1911 to 1922, and there in 1926, when they built Route 66, the community moved, and it was a little bit too far over here by the railroad, I guess, and basically the community closed down. So the post office from 1911 to 1922 had about 35 people that lived here, and now this is all that's left. Now there is Heyburn Lake, so the name kind of is still familiar to people around here. It's just a little bit north, a few miles, but interesting to find some remnants of Heyburn, which has been gone for about 100 years. Slick began as an oil boom town in 1920, named for oilman Thomas B. Slick, who drilled a discovery well nearby. The Oklahoma Southwestern Railway was completed in town the same year in 1920. In 1922, the town had an estimated population of 3,000 people. However, production of oil began to decline in the latter part of 1923, and the railroad was abandoned by 1930. So you can see there the remnants of the old school. So when the town first appeared on the U.S. Census in 1930, the population was only 422. And as you look at that census, it dropped for a couple decades and then pretty much leveled out. It was 151 in 1950, still that same number today in 2020. Some interesting things to see here. There's the old depot, and then there is an old school as well that is being used by some cattle as a home nowadays. Get back to Route 66. We're going to go back up and reconnect at Bristow, head over to Depew, and then just a little bit south of Route 66 down to Milfay. Bristow began in 1898 when the St. Louis and San Francisco Railway built a track between Sapulpa and Oklahoma City. The town was named for Joseph Bristow, an assistant U.S. Postmaster General who later served as a U.S. Senator from Kansas. Post office was established in 1898, and at their first census of 1900, the population was 626. Bristow was designated as the county seat for Creek County at statehood in 1907. However, the county had a special election in 1908 to decide whether The seat would remain in Bristow or move to Sapulpa, which claimed to be more centrally located. Bristow had a larger population at the time and claimed to have better railroad connections. Sapulpa won the election, but Bristow claimed voting irregularities. The election was voided and a new vote was held in 1912, but Sapulpa won the election and was the county seat. Bristow had 7 cotton gins and 2 cottonseed oil mills in the early 20th century. Other farms in the area produced corn, peanuts, potatoes, and fruit. Oil and gas were also discovered in the area and led to the construction of 3 refineries and 4 pipeline companies by 1930. And all that led to the population there rising to 6,630 by 1930. But then, as you can see, it dropped off over the next 30 or 40 years to under 5,000, but has pretty much remained steady in the last several decades at 4,248 today. And our next town is Depew. Nice drone shot there. You can see the downtown area, Route 66 off to the left, but this is the original alignment of Route 66 in 1926. Most of the time, the original alignment would have went through the towns, and nowadays, a lot of the newer versions of Route 66 will bypass the town. And in this town, they have that kind of marked right there in the downtown area to tell you that. So originally, there was a settlement known as Hall that was in this area, and then they built the St. Louis and Oklahoma City Railroad, like I was talking about with Bristow, in 1898. In 1901, Walter Malley founded this town, and he called the post office Depew in honor of U.S. Senator Chauncey Depew of New York. Beginning in 1905, the Depew Investment Company platted a town and sold lots, and then by 1909, the first school was erected. Early on, Depew served as an agricultural sports center with an estimated population of 150 in 1909. In 1915, the oil field near town had developed, and a railroad line was constructed from here to Shamrock, another oil boom town to the north. By the 1930s, several grain mills, 3 gasoline plants, and 4 cotton gins operated. And you can see that was the peak of population there, 1,126 in 1930. Gradually has gone down ever since. The 411 it is today is the lowest recorded population since it officially became a town. Here's another community that's been bypassed by Route 66. This is Milfay. You can see the railroad right down there. And I think that came through in the late 1890s, and a community sprouted up here. Post office started in 1911, and there's the post office today. So there was a guy named Mills and a guy named Fay, and that's how they got the name Milfay. Kind of an unusual name. We'll check out the post office. Milfay is unincorporated and, like I said, bypassed by Route 66, so not sure it's going to get much bigger. Final part of our trip, let's head down to Keywest. Who wouldn't want to go to Keywest? And then we'll finish the day in Stroud. A couple miles south of Route 66, and down there was a sign that said Keywest Cemetery, established in the 1890s. So certainly well before Route 66, and I drove down the road and I almost missed it. But there it is. Couldn't find very much out about Keywest. Obviously, when you hear Keywest, you think about Florida. But it did have a post office twice, from 1908 to 1909, and then 1924 to 1925. So kind of interesting, right before Route 66 in 1926. And I'm not going to trounce back through there, but that one there says 1901 on it. It says 1942. So, yeah, a variety of dates. Certainly old, historic kind of area. Pretty interesting. I don't know anything about Keywest. Maybe they named it after the Florida city. Would make sense. I've seen other Keywest kind of ghost towns and cemeteries around the country, so likely where it would have been named. But yeah, very quiet back here, way off in the Backroads. Our final town of the day is Stroud. It was founded in 1892, named for town developer James Stroud. Early on, the town lay in Oklahoma Territory, where alcoholic drinks could be sold legally. Stroud was known as a whiskey town and had a wild reputation due to its many saloons and other businesses catering to thirsty cowboys and travelers arriving from dry Indian territory. Those days ended when Oklahoma became a state in 1907. Early 1900s, Stroud's economy was based on cotton farming. 2 banks were robbed at the same time in 1915 by legendary outlaw Henry Starr, along with 6 other men. Henry and another outlaw were wounded and captured in the gun battle. The rest of the gang escaped with $5,800. Henry was sentenced to prison, but was paroled after serving only 4 years. When construction of Route 66 was completed in 1926, Stroud had motels, gas stations, and restaurants. It was devastated in 1999 by the Oklahoma tornado outbreak, which destroyed the town's 53-store outlet center as well as a distribution center. Neither of these facilities were rebuilt, and the resulting loss of 800 jobs caused significant amount of economic distress to the town. Looking at that population, you can see how it peaked in 1980 and then went down after that point, but has pretty much leveled off, 2,719 today. In 2001, Pixar crews visited to research Route 66 for the animated film Cars at a time when the town economy was still attempting to recover from the 1999 tornado. The character of Radiator Springs hotelier Sally Carrera is heavily based on Rock Cafe proprietor Dawn Welch and her efforts to promote and rebuild the town. I'd say it's pretty appropriate to stop here and finish the day in Stroud. What an awesome downtown they have right here. They got multiple Route 66 things like the sign behind me, Centennial. They got this pavilion here, and they have the Rock Cafe, which is a kind of famous Route 66 and the movie Cars stop. And yeah, so it's seems like this is the appropriate place to end the day. I'm gonna go over here and take a seat. Hope you enjoyed this little tour of, on and off Route 66. I love the towns, the small towns on Route 66, especially as you get away from the cities. But also like finding out the little stories, like Heyburn being a town that got bypassed by Route 66. So I think those stories are cool too. I was thinking about going further, but as I was flying the drone, I could see Route 66 down the middle and a giant American flag on the right, and I go, I don't think I could top this for an ending. So we're gonna end the day here. Eventually we'll probably keep on going west from here towards Oklahoma City, but until then, I will see you down a back road. Now that you made it to the end of that video, let me tell you about some of the extras on the channel. One of the things you can do is become a member. There are 3 levels of support. There's supporter, producer, and executive producer levels. All 3 have different levels of fun incentives and perks. If you haven't done so, please check out travelwiththewiseguy.com. There are lots of extras on there to explore. One of them is merchandise. We have Travel with the Wise Guy coffee mugs, Death Go Round t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and all sorts of fun things to show your support of this channel. Also on the website is a custom Google map. I've dropped pins in every place I've visited and linked the episode to each location. This seems to be a very popular feature for many of you. Also, sign up for my free newsletter that goes out about once a month. There are all sorts of links and tidbits on this page, old videos, podcasts, and just about everything I can think of I throw on the website. For all that information and more, go to travelwiththewiseguy.com. And now, the reason you're probably here, the outtakes. Well, there's no longer a school in Slick. They got the playground equipment and the Death Go Round. Got a dog over there. It's a wobbler. Pretty good. Classic. I'm sure it got a lot of use in its day. Needs a little bit of tightening up. I'll give it 6.8. Slick's got this cool old train depot, and they had the Death Go Round. You got some foosball. I think this is City Hall. It says water payments over there. Foosball. No ball, just some foos. I don't think the school in Milfay is open anymore. They got a lot of old playground equipment. Got 1, 2. Really low to the ground. This looks like a monster, like heavy. Yep, it's heavy, but spins really well. Yeah, that's a very good one. 7.6. Kind of like that little car. And this is identical to the other one. See if it spins the same. This one makes a little bit of noise, but I think it spins better. That one's still spinning over there. Just because of the noise, a little rougher sounding, we're gonna get a 7.4. There's Route 66 right there. And this must be the UFO of Route 66 here in Stroud.